Hey everybody, I am gonna make a video today on how to make this very thing here in React. And so you can see it's got this little sliding interface and the screen updates as I interact with it. And it's really just intended as a quick introduction to how to think in terms of React components, how to pass information between different views, and how to make a spiral. So we're going to use this formula here that I grabbed from Stack Overflow, sort of, variation on it, which is an Archimedean spiral. And I'll put these links in the description. My my hope here is just to, I don't know, give folks a little bit of practice coding or watching the coding of a React app. And this also can be I just made a series of videos on declarative programming, React being one of the key exemplars of that. And this, you could look at this as a kind of a example of how a declarative library like React will help manage this thing called state. The state. We all need help managing the state, right? So I'm not going to explain too much about React in this video. Mostly just more like a live coding thing. And at some point, I am going to make a series of videos on introducing React, but this is really just intended to be some practice. And this is the version of it that I made. You can see we're going to have a few files, but we're going to build it from scratch. So I'm going to get rid of that editor. And over here, I'm in VS Code. I'm inside of a folder. I'm going to create a React app. And so I'm going to call it npx create React app. So you need to have Node installed, and you need to have npm installed in order to make this happen. But this create React app is going to pretty much take care of building a template for me. So I'm going to say, let's just call this Spiral Live. And as that's building, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what React is. It's, you know, as I was saying, declarative management for your front end, your UI state. And, you know, it was created to solve some performance and bug problems that Facebook was having. What we do is it's a lot like, you know, if you've ever written JavaScript that updates the DOM, you know it can be kind of a pain. And React aims to help that. So let us create JavaScript applications that update the DOM without all the mess and the fuss. It does introduce its own sort of kind of fuss along the way. But I think it's a fun fuss, and I hope you will too. So you can see here we have this app that just got built. The entry point into our app is going to be in the source folder in index.js. Now you can see there's also a public folder here. In this public folder is an index.html. That very importantly here has a div with the ID of root. And in our React app, React is getting access to that with document.getElementById, and it is inserting a bunch of JavaScript into that div. And that JavaScript is here. You can see this is kind of maybe an unusual syntax for you. It looks a little bit like HTML, but this is a JavaScript file. And so JSX sort of kind of lets you write HTML in JavaScript, sort of kind of. But each one of these is actually a function. And we'll get into what that is and why and such in a bit, but just want to mention in that series of videos, the super fast introduction to functional programming, I was talking about these higher order functions where you have a function like this one here. Render is a method from React DOM. You pass functions into it. And so this render method is going to take a component, aka a function, and it's going to insert that into a DOM reference. And we can see this app in action. We can yarn or npm start. And I have to cd into Spiral Live, and now npm start. And up comes my new application. There it is. So that's the template that the React team gives you to get started with. I'm going to delete it. So I'm just going to come in here and, I like to just delete all these files and start from scratch. And I'll make an index.js. And this is going to be just a JavaScript file. So here in index.js, I now don't have anything. So my app is not showing anything. But I could do something here in this JavaScript file without any React or anything. I could do something like alert. Hi there. And now I get that alert. Or I could do some traditional, DOM manipulation. I could say const root equals document dot get element by ID and get that root that we know is out there. I didn't change the index.html file. And I could say const my div equals document dot create element div dot inner my div. And now we'll get some text on the page. I just have to say root dot append child my div. And we're compiling. It's up, and here we go. Okay. And there's my text. So React is going to help us with this DOM manipulation in a number of ways. First of all, it'll handle state management, which is a big, ominous-sounding set of words that I'll get into as we go along. And it's going to do something called DOM diffing, which means it'll only update things when they absolutely need to get updated. So it's a little bit more performant than writing it in this way. Now, before I actually get started writing React, I want to just mention a couple of extensions that I like to use. One is here, simple React snippets. And what this will let you do is instead of saying import React, you can just say IMR. And when you want to write a class component with a constructor, for instance, you can just type CCC and then return, and you'll get a bunch of code. And so we can actually see in here, IMR, just like that. And I can say CCC, and I get all that code. And these are just these sort of very repetitive code chunks that you need to write a lot. And this way you can avoid typos and save yourself a little bit of time. Another thing that I really recommend is to use Emmet. And Emmet comes with VS Code by default. So I can just say div, and I get my full div out there. And I can say div ID me, and I get the ID there. And to enable Emmet in with React, you have to go to Preferences, Open Settings, JSON, and in here, somewhere on this JSON file, you need to say this right here. And so just go ahead, pause the video, and copy that into your settings.json if you can. I think it'll make your life easier. All right, so I'm going to delete this stuff, and I'm going to go back to index.js. You can see is right here. And I'm going to just say IMR. We're going to build the entry point into our app. We're going to insert, this is where we're going to use a thing called React DOM, which we can get from React DOM from React DOM. And, you know, again, I can also just go imrd and get that import. So we're importing from the node modules folder both React and React DOM. And now I need to use React DOM. This is the only time I'm going to use React DOM in my app. And I'm going to use a method called render, like I said, to perform this diffing. And the first thing I'm going to pass in is going to be a function declared as JSX. And the second thing is going to be my root. And so that's that same root that I've been playing with already. And now it's going to fail because it's saying app is not defined. And a nice thing I think about React is it helps us think about the whole idea of React is to build these components that are modular and reusable. Sounds awfully functional in style, doesn't it? It is. So let's make one. I'm going to say import app from app. And now here in the root level of my source folder, I need to make that file app.js. And again, I'll say IMR. And I think in this case, what I'll do is make a class component. And we'll call it app. And we can now take a look at this. So I'm going to actually, before I pause, just say hi there. And we can refresh that. Component is not defined, right? So I can say here, I'm going to bring in not just React, but also a component. And now if I go to my browser, I'm hoping I'll see hi there again. Yeah, there we go. And so maybe I'll say hi there from app. And there we go. We're in hi there from app. And you can see my code is being automatically updated with live server because of all these. Actually, it's not live server with, I forget what they use, but it's hot reloading that is enabled automatically by this create React app application that built out a whole bunch of actually hidden configuration options. And maybe in another video I'll go into ejecting and looking at all those Webpack scripts and everything, but that's for a much later day. Today we just want to look at this idea of a component. And here we see a component. It's a class named app. And when we say extends component, that means it's just building on this component module that React is part of the React library. And you can see we have this thing called state that can help us keep track of certain variables. And I think I'm going to put one in now. I'm going to say num circles, and we'll just say 500. Right? And so now I've got this value num circles. It's a property of an object inside of my app that I can have is going to help me keep track of uh, the state of my interface. And I think maybe what we can go ahead and do is take this out and start thinking about building this interface. And if you remember, it's going to be a spiral at the top and then this slider down at the bottom. So why don't I go ahead and make a thing called spiral and make a thing called slider. And React is now going to complain. It's going to say, well, it's going to say several things, but I think the first thing it's going to notice is adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag, meaning you can't have JSX elements that are at the same level depth of the DOM. And so those two siblings need to have a parent. And I'm going to use something called react.fragment. Actually, you know what I'll do is make this a div. So we can wrap these in anything we want to, really. They just have to be wrapped in something in order to be returned here. And I also need to make those, spiral and slider. And so why don't we go ahead and do that too. Here, I'm going to select my source and add a folder called components. These are going to be reusable chunks of code. And these are actually, as I've said numerous times already, these are functions. Each one of these is actually a function. And I'm going to stop and talk about that for a second. So why don't we just make these real quick. We'll say spiral. We'll say IMR. And then I'm going to do a stateless functional component, SFC. And I can also maybe write this one. No, I'm not going to write this by hand because, oops, it's just a waste of time. And so this is going to be called spiral. I think the sooner you start working with snippets, the better, even if this is your very first day working with React. And so now I've got this thing called a spiral. Every component needs to have a return value. And so here in this return value, I'm just going to return a div. And that's Emmet in action, in case you were wondering why that's so fast. And we're going to do the same thing with slider. We'll say import React, stateless functional component named slider. And again, we'll put that in a div. And now this should be defined, this should be defined, and I need to just bring them in to my application. I'll say import slider from slider. Oh, components slider. And we'll also import, what was that called? Spiral. So now we've got everything working. Spiral is now defined. I don't have any content, but what I could do is go to spiral, and I'll say hi from spiral. And from slider, I'll say hi from slider. And so now that text is being rendered to the page, and there we go. We got the two divs right there. We'll build out our spiral. We'll start building out our spiral in a sec, but I just want to pause and now mention. Now this is obviously a function. I keep saying components are functions. This is obviously a function here, slider, right? It's an arrow function that returns some JSX, right? That looks a lot like HTML, but it's on a JavaScript page, so remember that's JSX. And I don't know what this div is doing down here. And spiral the same way. Obviously a function. It's got a return value. Every component needs to have a return value. And that's React enforcing this idea from functional programming that functions need to return something. And that helps us cut down on unintended side effects. And I think as you spend more time with React, these things will become more clear. And I'll just talk about them more as they come up than talk about them in the abstract anymore. But I do want to mention here this class app extends component. Remember, classes in JavaScript are actually functions. So this is also a function. And its render method returns the JSX. You can't write a component, a stateful component, without a render method that returns a value. And this is obviously considered a stateful component because it has some state. And state is one of the key reasons you would want to use a component, a class component over this other type of component, this stateless functional component. We need this here because, remember, on our interface, we've got this value num circles. And that state value is going to keep track of what the current value of num circles is for us. And it's going to be updated by this slider. It's going to come in to the slider component right here to show us what the number is. And it's going to also go into this spirals thing to update the number of circles, actually. So this app component is sort of the brains of this small application. And we'll use state to keep track of where we're at. And this kind of state management is why React exists, because it can get very complicated when you're working with interaction. We've only got one slider, but imagine if we had 20 sliders. Imagine if they were being updated, not just by the current user, but by users all around the world. That's very possible, like something like Facebook, right? Who built this? Users everywhere are clicking on little hearts and loving you. And it's such a beautiful thing, but it's very hard to keep track of as a web developer. So that's why React exists. And here we're not going to make anything that complicated. We're just going to use it for some creative coding. Alrighty, so I think the first thing to do is to get started with this this spiral here. And I think what I'm going to do is actually call this, we'll call this container. And inside of that container, that's the overall app container, I'm going to make another container that's going to contain this spiral. And we're going to call it, it's going to be an SVG element. So we're going to use SVG to build this. I like SVG. I hope you'll like it too. Maybe if you have experience with it, great. If you don't worry. We're not doing anything too crazy with it. But to use SVG, an SVG element, we need to define a few things. We need to define a viewbox. And we need to define a width. And we need to define a height. And you can see, you'll see this a lot when we're working in JSX. Between these curly braces are where we can put JavaScript-y type of things. So you can't actually write, this is weird, but here in this JSX element between these divs here, actually I think inside of this return statement, I can't just write JavaScript in here. I'm on a JavaScript page, but I can't write this. It's going to give me an error. So it's saying that's unexpected. I can put this above the return statement in the render method, and that works fine. Oh, but I haven't populated these. So this is one of the things you just have to get used to with React. Is that your code's gonna be full of these little curly braces, and inside of those curly braces is gonna be some JavaScript. And that's looks an awful lot like an object, doesn't it? Which is great because objects are data. All right, and so I'm gonna define this width and height like this. I'm gonna say const canvas width equals window dot inner width. And I'm going to say const canvas height equals window dot inner height. And so now I've got these two constants. They're going to reflect the width and height of the window. Now they're going to be constants, so as people resize the browser window, they're not going to change, but that's just a slightly higher level of abstraction that I want to get into right now. It's not that hard to do. We'll do it in another video. I'm going to use these values, canvas width and canvas height, right here. Width and height. And here in viewbox, what I want to give is a string. I'm going to use a template literal so I can use my canvas width and canvas height. And I'll say 0, 0, canvas width, canvas height. But since this is a template literal, I need to enclose my JavaScript in more curly braces. And so there you go. Oh, this is undefined. So now I've got a view box. It's got a width and a height. And I think what I'm going to do also is make a CSS file. There's a bunch of different ways to style CSS in React. For this one, I'm just going to go app.css. And I change all the time. There'll be other videos where I do this in different ways, do it in the JavaScript or whatever. But I think for right now, I just want to do here. I'm going to set SVG's background color to hot pink. And maybe I'll also get this container, right? So let's just take a look at this before I get the container. So now, oh, I don't see anything. I'm not sure what's up there. Nothing there. So, oh, duh. I need to import my CSS right here. So I'll say import app.css. And now that CSS should come in, and my browser, my SVG is there. And it says down there, hi from slider. So I can see I've already made a gaff, which is my canvas is going to be as big as the height of the window, and my slider is going to be off the screen. So let's change that. We'll say instead of canvas height, minus 300, something like that. We might have to tweak that later. There we go. So that slider's up there. Maybe I'll tweak that a little bit. And actually, maybe what I'll do is just keep that canvas height variable there. And we'll say canvas height is equal to that, minus 200. So now we go in here, and we can see there's my slider. I'm going to also go ahead and add in here. We'll say dot container. So this is that wrapping div around both of these. We just want to make this whole screen be pink, but keep we'll keep the slider out of the SVG. And so in here, what I need to be able to say is just, I'll say width, 100 VW, height, 100 V height. And so this is just going to cover the whole thing, and we'll also make this be background color pink. And now my slider's still there, and it's the same color as my canvas. So we're just following along with this. Now let's make this spiral. This is maybe the fun part. So let's get down to it. We want to close that. Now, what I'm going to do is, you see how I've got this value num circles, right? And we know that num circles is going to be updated by the slider, and I also need to feed that value into both the slider and the spiral. And so this is kind of like feeding an argument into a function, right? And so the way we do this is we say num circles like that. And so that num circles now is going to appear inside of my spiral component, aka function, and it's gonna pass in a value that I'm gonna put between these curly braces. And so you see this a lot. You'll see a property, and then you'll see its declaration, right? Which will be usually some curly braces. It could be, I can hard code this like that. I can just pass in 500, but most of the time we write these because we want to be able to update things dynamically. So here I've got num circles. I'm passing it into num circles, and I'm going to do that with my slider as well. So both of those are going to get this value num circles. Now, I don't currently have that value. Num circles is not defined. So I need to get that value from somewhere, and I'm going to get that value from state. There's a number of different ways to do this, but here we could just say this dot state dot num circles. Num circles is a property on my state object, right? I much prefer to do it like this, and I think it's a good habit to get into. We'll just say const. I'm going to now destructure this value, num circles, by putting it between these curly braces, equals this dot state. So I'm pulling that property off of my state object, and now it's available in here. And we can see it's up and running just like before. I don't have any circles, but we're about to use that num circles. And so we're going to make those circles now. We're going to go into spiral, and we're going to pull in num circles. And now we can draw our circles. I'm going to get rid of this div, and in its place, I'm going to put a group tag. And a group tag is kind of like a div, but for SVG. And this div here, we can make one circle. And we just have to give it some properties. We'll say cx equals 400, cy equals 400, r equals 150, fill equals white. And if I go to we see we've got a circle. Yay! We're making good headway here. We sure are. Now, in this spiral, it doesn't need to be a stateful component, but it is where we're going to handle everything related to this circle. And, just for fun in a way, but maybe because we might want to change our circle later, we can actually put that into a circle component, right? And so we can say in components, we'll say circle component.js. And we'll say IMR, and we'll make this circle component. And our circle component is going to need to take in some values, and it's going to return this circle. So our circle component, it'll have an X, it'll have a Y, it'll have a size, and it'll have a fill color. And we can get those things, we can pass those in from above. We'll say X, Y, size, fill color, right? And this is going to be broken for now, I think. We'll see. On our slider, not our slider, our spiral, we need to import circle component from circle component, and then we need to use it in here. And we remember we need to pass in an X, a Y, a size, and a fill color. And we're going to use values that we are going to generate using our array methods. Yay! Just like we talked about in those videos. And you know what? This is also going to have a key. Because what we're going to do is actually use a map method to generate these circles. So we'll say something like points dot map. Oops, why did that do that? Dot map, and we'll say points, and also, yeah, we'll just for now we'll just say points, and then we're going to return a circle component. And maybe just to make this a little more legible, we can do this like this. So, and we could plug some default values in here. But I think what I'd rather do, maybe we'll just plug in a color here for now. So we'll plug that color in there. We don't have a key, we don't have an X, we don't have one Y. So let's make those now, okay? I'm going to make this array called points. And I'm going to make a function, generate points. Because I think this functional style is super good and helpful. And I'm going to say num circles, center, and let's take a look at that formula for making the spiral. Where did that little old thing go? So this was the one that I I found that was just so simple and easy to work with, and it's in JavaScript. And there's a little example here you can play with. Um, but you can see the gist of it is basically we're going to need, and let's take a look at this example. And so this is using this is old fashioned. This is not React, but you can see it's it works, and it's not like horribly slow or anything. So this is technically this is not the type of problem that React was created to solve. We can do this. This person was doing this using jQuery. God knows how long ago. But I just like to use these kind of simple examples to show how things work in React, and maybe in some other videos I can show you cases where React is really essential. But you see, here's our formula. We need an x and a y. We're going to generate an x and a y like this. So I'm going to just grab this imperative style code, and it's going to be the basis for this function. So we'll need num circles. That's going to be this here. We'll need a center, and we'll need an A and a B. And we'll make this function. We'll say const generate points equals a function that takes in num circles, center, A, and B. And it's going to return up some points, I think. And so we're gonna, let's see, how we're gonna do this. First of all, I think we need to make this center. And I'm gonna go back out to my app level. And I'm gonna say const center equals x, canvas width over 2, y canvas height over 2. Right. So now I've got this center value, and let's pass it into Spiral. So now in Spiral we can bring in center. And why don't we generate points inside here. So now we can pass center and num circles into that function. And also we need this A and this B. Let's think about where we're going to get A and B from. I think I'm going to go ahead and put those on this dot state. I think I'm going to say A, give it a default value, and B, give it a default value. And remember this, because at the end I'm going to have a challenge for you, which is to make your own slider using those values. But I'll probably try and trick you and not remind you that those values are there to work with. But we could, if we wanted to, just like in that example we were looking at. I guess I got rid of it. And so we're still failing to build, but we'll get there. We could have these A and B values be also controlled by sliders. I'm going to just keep them as their 1.1s for now. And so let's make this generate points. And then we should be able to see our circles. So I think what I'll do is think what I'll do is something like this. Const points equals, let's make some numbers. And you know what? Let's just do array.from length 100. And let's just console.log this. Oh wait, this should be num circles. Let's just console.log points. And make sure what we should get, if you're familiar with array.from, it's going to take in, as its first parameter, I'm going to pass in an object that specifies the length of the array I want, and then a function which is going to say, what do I want to be in that array? And it's just going to return the index value of each element of the array. I hope. We'll see. Let's take a look. I guess we're not able to do that because it's not building right now. But we'll get there. So we've got this array of points, and I'm just going to say return points. And now points.map, we can say this is going to be points, and we'll just comment out the rest of this. See if we can. Oh boy, lots of undefines here. Century is not defined. Where the heck are we at? Oh my god. Oh, that's all the code from A and B are not defined. Why are they not defined? Yes. A, B. And now we're compiling successfully. And we can see we've got our array of numbers. So that's good. I've got 500 numbers. That's what I wanted. I just wanted to be sure that that was happening. And now we know it is. We're logging the points. Now we can transform these points. And we'll say points.map. And I'm going to say this would be like this. Numbers and points. This would be numbers. We'll say const points equals numbers.map. So we first create an array called numbers. And I'm just doing this to make things clear to myself 10 minutes from now when I forget what I was trying to do. And now we're going to take those numbers, and on each number that we have in our array, we're going to map something. We're ultimately going to return an object that's going to have an X and a Y. And so we're going to transform each one of these numbers using that formula from before. We're going to transform each one of these numbers into a spiral that works for us. And, you know, when I did this the first time, I had to play with this a little bit. You remember the formula looks a little like this. So X is a thing we're going to generate by getting center.x plus, and let's just say in here for now, we'll just say angle, right? Are we getting an angle? No. We need to say const angle equals 0.1 times I. And it's just going to reduce that a little bit. And now angle times math dot cosine of angle. Right. And so this is sort of like the core function here. And we'll elaborate on it just a little bit to get it to look better. So y is going to be now center dot y. This will be sine. And this is just straight up geometry for creating a modified circle. And the modification of the circle, and we can actually just look at this right now. Let's actually look at this circle. And then I think maybe I'll take a pause and go play tennis with my daughter. Come back and do the rest of this later. R equals 100. And this will be R. Let's see if we've got a circle. No, we don't have a circle yet because we need to take those values and feed them into our spiral. So let's just bring all this back. And now points will point, and this will be point.x, point.y. We'll just say 20. And we'll just say let's see if we've got a circle. Yeah, we've got a circle. And that's a bunch of circles that we can make smaller. Let's say 2. Oops. Nice. And saying here, encounter 2 children with the same key. So I should deal with that. This is going to be and let's actually call this, and we'll say here, index. So this every component that you create using this map function, you got to give it a unique key so that React can help us keep track of it. In case we want to say have an onclick method or whatever. And so I'm going to use a template literal. And we'll just say spiral. And we'll say point ID. And then index. And we need then to give our point an ID. Here. And we'll say ID will be index. Oh, I. All right, so now we should get that to go away. All right, good. So we're making some progress. We've got a lot of little circles here, and you know what? Let's change the num circles to 10, and then you can see those are actually independent circles. Let's say 30, and let's make this size. Be an actual value. And we can do say circle size. Bring that in. No, not that. That goes here. app level. And we'll bring all those in. And we'll pass those. Let's just get this spiral going before I take this break. So we're into the spiral. We'll pass num circles, circle size. And this is one of the annoying things. I don't know why you can't just say circle size and pass it in, but you know, if anyone knows, leave it in the comments. Just seems like the kind of thing you could abstract away if you really wanted to. So now we've got center, num circle, circle size, and A and B. And I'm actually going to move this center to the first one. Keep these together. So num circle, circle size, A, B, center. And I got to keep this. I think actually I don't have to keep this order correct, but I'm going to anyway. A, B. All right, good. And so now we've got A and B coming in, and let's check again. Oh, that's cool. So we're making this kind of neat shape here. It's like a cardioid. Let me make that size be smaller. It's a little big. There we go. So now we've got our circles. Let's turn them into an actual spiral. So let's get this. Right now, this is the formula for a circle. I'm actually not sure why that didn't quite look like a circle. I think it was just that we were doing more than 360 degrees. What I want to do is I'm just going to copy in what I came up with that I think looks pretty good, because this is the kind of thing that can be pretty time consuming. And so this is going to be B, and this is going to be A. And we'll use that same thing on the Y as well. And this is going to be A, and this is going to be B. And R is assigned a value but never used. You're so right. Let's get rid of that. Uh-oh. Why isn't that doing the right thing? ID, no circles, plus. Well, this is what the danger of live coding is. You can end up looking kind of silly. I'm not sure that formula, those settings worked pretty well for me before. I think maybe I'm going to add. First of all, I'll go back and get a lot more. We'll say num circles is going to be 720. Let's see what we get now. So there we go. We're getting the spiral's pretty tight inside, but as it comes out, it gets a little bit bigger. And you know what we can do actually is, let's say, let's make this into a value, and this can be something that could also be a slider, but I'm just going to make this circle size scalar. And now you can see this is one of the pains is when you get these, you do this thing, it's called prop drilling, you know, where you have to change multiple values. This is a good argument for other forms of state management that are available to us, like Redux. That's again kind of a bigger topic. And so we'll change this to scalar. And now I'm gonna change this to IDX over and whoopsie daisy, nan. Let's see. I think what we want instead is or did I goof on circle size scalar? I must have. Let's take a look. So circle size scalar comes in. Circle size scalar comes in. That's it. Go back to the app. Circle size scalar. So I was just getting that error, not a number. And now you can see it's a little bit smaller on the interior, and then it gets bigger as it goes out. I think, as I was saying, I'm going to go play some tennis with my daughter. But let's just do one more thing here, which is to generate those random colors. And then I'll come back and add the slider in the next video. And so I'm going to do that for now. I'm just going to do that here in Spiral again. So we've got our generate points function. And up here, we're gonna make these random colors. And there's a really cool article here. I'm gonna put this in the description that talks about how to generate kind of like a rainbow gradient using JavaScript. And it's pretty neat. I like it a lot. I'm gonna just cheat a little bit here because I'm in a little bit of a hurry. And I'm just gonna copy and paste this in here and let you can either pause the video and copy all this in, or just go ahead and I'm gonna need this range function too, which I probably should have brought in from the beginning. It's just a little helper function. Does the same thing as array from. You can there's a link to the code repo in the description for this video. Basically what this generate rainbow does is it will take in a number of circles and map those to each of those circles. It'll map a portion of the total available color space. It's pretty neat. It's going to generate an array of colors according to the number of circles, and then I can assign those down below. So what I can do is call here. I'll say const colors equals generate rainbow. And I'm going to pass in num circles. All right, and now colors is unused, but not for long. We'll say fill color. And here we'll say colors at index, right? Index being the second argument for this map function. So it'll give the index number of the points. We can look that up in the colors array, and we get this pretty thing. I'm gonna do one more thing. I'm gonna say, let's see, let me make this scalar over here in app scalar. Let's make it 10, just see what that does. Nice. So now we've got these colors. They're super dense. I want to do one last thing here, which is set the opacity of my circle. And right here in the circle component, I can just add opacity equals 0.5. Go back to my browser and look at that. Nice. I think we need to get our scale a little bigger. Maybe I'll just make for now, just make the scalar be 20. See if we get a little more separation. There we go. That's looking about right. I like that. It's a nice pattern. We did it in React. Thanks for watching. And I'm gonna make one more video later. It's gonna involve bringing the slider in. Hope that was enjoyable and interesting. For more on the Archimedes spiral, I'll put the Wikipedia article. Boy, that's some complicated functions. And I'll also put the simple function from this fiddle. And really recommend this article on a rainbow generator. If you've ever wanted to learn what you actually use a flux capacitor for, it's right here. So